On the show today, we get to talk COP26 as we talk climate change and how it's affecting the whole globe, but more especially zeroing in onto Zambia. But post-budget is still in the atmosphere, and we want to understand to what extent the National Budget 2022 is going to affect all sectors of Zambia's economic growth. This is Strictly Business. This is Strictly Business. My name is JudyNgulube. We start off with issues of climate change, and all this is just surrounding the UN Climate Conference, COP26, which got underway on Sunday in Glasgow in UK. Now, this has to deliver real progress on climate change, on climate action, with the science of growing that time is running out. Now, what does it mean time is running out? For who, for what, and where does Zambia fit in when it comes to this? Of course, Hakainde Hichilema, Zambia's 7th Republican president, has gone to the UK to make sure that our presence is felt. But let's talk to the people who are dealing with this on the ground in Zambia. On the phone, my first guest, Isabel Mukelabai, is going to talk to me about issues of climate change. Isabel, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Judy?
I'm fine, thank you. Sunday, COP26 got underway. How do you feel about that?
Very timely. First of all, very important space for global leaders to meet and together develop joint solutions for our climate change problems. I think that space is very, very critical in terms of defining what the global priorities will look like in terms of climate. And as you know, the Republican head of state is also at COP26 this year, joining world leaders in affirming Zambia's commitment towards the fight against climate change. But let me be quick to mention that the fight against climate change is also largely dependent on the developed countries who are larger emitters of carbon and really securing their commitment in terms of the key actions that we need to see largely from the West. And from where we see things, we think that the collective of leaders at COP26 is very key in terms of giving us clear solutions that we can actually implement that will be important for building low resilient economies across the globe.
Okay, now zeroing it in to our country, Zambia, we're talking about this, and you talk about it being timely and issues of priority. The Lower Zambezi has got the issue of wanting to build a mine versus what that mine would do to the climate, to the environment. And of course, this is about human behavior and what it will do to the environment vis-a-vis. So this is like this developing country wants to have this industry going on, but then again striking a balance with making sure that the environment and the climate is being taken care of.
So that's a very interesting angle you take, Judy. But just to be clear, that permitting mining in a national park should be a complete no for this country. We understand the importance, the ecological importance of certain areas, and the Lower Zambezi is very, very important for a number of elements. Having said that, I think the fact that the country is even talking about mining there speaks to our own policy and legislation that permits such actions, and this is where we need to start from. We need to start by re-looking at the way that we have structured our legislation and policy and make sure that there is coherence, because if as a country we don't have stronger protection for what we call protected areas, it will be very difficult for us to sort of, create a balance between development and conservation. And I think that the two elements are not necessarily in competition. They shouldn't be. But what is important here is to ensure that we do have the right level of policy balance when it comes to these issues, that the levels of regulations are being implemented through the Environmental Management Act and other provisions, that also adequate consultation, even with institutions such as the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, is also done. But more importantly, it is about ensuring that communities are also adequately informed One of the reasons I think that this issue of the Lower Zambezi creates such a big, public interest kind of matter is because this is mining being proposed in a national park. So
but
when
how
you
easy? Complete your thought?
Yeah. So when you do mining in an area like that, you are basically disturbing the natural habitat. And what that does is that it kills off the biodiversity that we need to sustain key economic activities such as tourism. Okay? Mining is very detrimental to the environment. So as the mining is happening, there will be massive pollutants going into the Zambezi River as well. So there are multiple dimensions to this, and what we would say is that there shouldn't be mining in ecologically sensitive areas.
But how easy or challenging is it for a developing country like ours to strike this balance where you're trying to create industry, you're trying to create a basis for socio-economic development, trying to get to those growth targets by the end of the year, versus now trying to conserve the climate or the environment that you're working in with these industries, with human capital and all that?
Judy, I think it's very funny that, at the national level, Zambia always boasts about having an abundance of natural resources. How is it that when we fully understand the natural capital we have, we would still be taking decisions that seek to harm this natural capital? So in answering that question in terms of how easy it is to create a balance, we need to be guided very much by national data. We need to be guided very much by scientific evidence that shows us that if we deliberately choose a particular line of economic activity, this is the kind of impact we are expecting to have. I think under normal circumstances, if you are looking at your own capacity to be able to run your own economy, even at household level, you are not going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. In this case, the decisions we take must not harm the environment. They must not necessarily bring challenges to the environmental resources that underpin the economy that we talk about every day. So yes, mining is important. It's going to be very important for Zambia's economy for many years to come. And we don't think that necessarily we can embark on a trajectory that says this is what sustainable mining can look like. But we do think that there are stronger standards, green standards for the mining sector that can be adopted.
All right.
There is a similar level of accountability that can also be built in. So the long and short of it is it's possible to create a balance, but this balance must be informed by national data, scientific evidence that is informing us on the choices we take.
All right. And when it comes to issues of, Zambia attaining and sustaining a green economy, especially after COP26?
I think in terms of sustaining the green economy, it's much more than pronouncement. So it's going to take a little bit more than just creating a green ministry. It's going to take much more than us being present at COP26, but it's a good starting point because that's where we get clear commitment. One of the things that is essential in Zambia embarking on a clear trajectory for the green economy will be the level of financing that comes to the sector for us to be able to build the right green skills that we need, for us to be able to build the right institutions that are required for us to bring stronger environmental compliance, and also for private sector as an industry to jump on board of the green economy agenda. So there's a lot of work to be done, Judy. Already, you see that in the national budget, we only have 0.6% of the allocation going to the environment sector. And so when you look at that, you can clearly see a misalignment in terms of priorities here. What we are saying and what we are actually doing seems to be a little bit misaligned.
All right. I appreciate you coming through, Isabel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are watching Strictly Business, and Isabel was talking about green economy and the green environment. Of course, there's this new ministry that is being headed by Collins Njovu, Honorable Collins Njovu. We did get a chance to catch up with him, and this is what he had to say in regards to issues of housing, issues of agriculture, and the patterns of charcoal burning when it comes to the climate change.
The theme, the greening of the economy, as you may be aware, is the only sustainable way of developing any economy in the world now. traditional ways of developing the economy where resource efficiency are not encouraged, where the environment is not at the center of the developmental agenda, are not sustainable. So we have all realized this, and we, as a government, as European government, want to ensure that we use our resources sustainably. I go back quickly to the forestry because of issues of climate change. The issues of climate change are with us, and we are, as humans, as Zambians, the main drivers of this climate change through our various interactions with the various natural resources, particularly the forests. And again, it's a reason why I'm so happy to be here, because we want to use this model. It's one of the few areas where you walk long distances or drive long distances, and there are still trees. It's the way the people here have been living. We want to get this model and use the people here to teach all the Zambians across the board. But believe me as well, I want to inform the Zambians through yourselves that issues of charcoal burning are actually illegal. You need a permit. Very soon we'll be enforcing the maximum strength of the law because you need a permit to burn charcoal. We're encouraging our people to go back to our traditional ways of living, agriculture. Remember, this government is supporting agriculture. This government will add value to the various products from the agricultural processes. This government will find a proper market for our farmers. So and by the way, we've already increased the Minister of Agriculture announced in Parliament an increase in the tax. So we are giving more support to the farmers right now. We are giving more support to the rest of the country, as the Honorable Milky was saying. So we are supporting all the Zambians. Another issue we really want to emphasize on to the developers is that we want our people as well to be at the center of this development.
That is Minister of Green Economy. Now, up next, we'll be getting into the budget analysis. Of course, there's a lot of pronouncements that have been made, a lot of expectations, a lot of analysis has been going on the last 2 days. But we're going to find out this time in issues of trade, import, export. And when it comes to that, import, export, there's also issue of debt management. I'm going to be talking to Gilbert Nkamba. He is a trade expert, just to analyze some of these issues and what exactly the budget means when it comes to issues of trade, import, export, and of course the taxes. Thank you so much for coming through. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Firstly, when you look at the budget with a bias obviously to trade, for you, what's your stance? It's
a very progressive budget because if you have noticed, priority has been placed on the domestic revenue mobilization. We have to, first of all, collect as much revenue domestically before you can look outside to borrow money to finance the economy.
When you talk about domestic revenue, it takes me straight to issues of payee. What's your take on that one as well?
Payee threshold probably cannot have that much impact because already the government has subsidized education. So that takes away the pressure that families have to pay for school children and so on and so forth. But there is more that can be done. Thanks, the government has introduced new management as ZRA. I hope they will now embrace the key stakeholders, namely the clearing agents, the importers, and indeed the business community, especially small and medium enterprise, those that are involved in export and import trading. These constitute 70% of the domestic revenue mobilization. If you have noticed countries that have developed, look at the Asian tigers. They started with improving the small and medium enterprise sector. So that sector, it creates jobs, it creates opportunities for more taxes, and it creates wealth for the economy.
But for the traders, starting from, the small and medium traders, the local ones who are just not as big, what would you say has been their expectation and has it been met?
For the traders, the biggest hindrance has been, in the trading sector, first of all, what is important is compliance management. And compliance management is between the tax authority and the traders themselves. If the tax authority is using a heavy hand, it is against the canons of taxation.
How heavy has it been?
Collecting tax should be convenient. Collecting tax should be simple. So when people are avoiding tax, it means the tax administration has to be reformed. People should be happy to pay. So enhancement of tax education is one of them. The other one is giving them an opportunity to air their grievances. And the other one is to encourage local businesses, because local businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, invest their money within the economy. In fact, in the formula of capital formation, these are very critical because they bank the money within the Zambian banks. So that forms a portfolio which can be used by government to lend out, and then that can regenerate more income for the economy.
All right. Talking about income for the economy, some of that income in inverted commas will be going to debt payments. How do you feel about the percentage that has been taken to debt payment for the country?
I think if you heard very critically, the government has engaged international creditors in terms of rescheduling the debt. And let me take this, or the opportunity of this platform, to also say this. There is nothing wrong with borrowing, but there are three things. First of all, when you borrow the money, you should take some time to pay. It shouldn't squeeze the economy. Secondly, when you borrow, invest money in a portfolio that will be able to generate resources so that you can be able to pay back that loan. Thirdly, when you borrow the money, it should give you some level of benefits, some level of advantage. And if you have noticed, the money being borrowed by the current administration is being used prudently. First of all, they are investing in the health sector, they are investing in the education sector, and they are also investing in the small and medium enterprise sector.
Wow. When you look at the income bracket, revenue churning out from the classes that we have, the classes also determine what type of business you're in, what type of things you're trading in as well. When you look at that and how Kasumbalesa is buzzing, to what extent will what the budget pronounced affect the traders there?
The budget pronouncement is a blueprint by the minister.
In terms of actualization and the reality now on the ground.
It's every well-meaning Zambian, especially the youths. The youths are in the most productive age cohort. They have to take advantage of these pronouncements. For example, the CDF, they will give business to local communities. Most of those should be youths. This is the most underutilized resource. Youths in Zambia should desist from social media. Don't be entertained by what people have already discovered. Be innovative, be hardworking, wake up at 05 and sleep at 22 hours. You are energetic, come on. This is the most critical resource we have in this country. Youth should not be waking up 8 hours and start drinking Chibwe and Tujiri in Chibolia compound. In fact, we want to petition State House to criminalize drinking beer by youths during official hours.
As policy, as law.
Yes.
Mr. Nkamba, we'd have this conversation for a long time, but due to time constraints, we'll definitely be having some of these, especially when we're seeing the blueprint getting into the realities.
Yes, yes, yes.
I appreciate you coming through. Thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you.
All right. I've been talking to Gilbert Nkamba, a trade expert. Now, still on the budget, we did sit down with the Minister of Education as well as Zaki, the CEO, who gave us their correlation between, the teachers that will be recruited, human capital, and the ripple effect on economic issues. So let's listen to them as they we spoke to them on Kwacha Good Morning Zambia.
You heard what the finance minister said. Sometimes, and I know because I've traversed this country quite for some time now. In the last 23 years before we came into power as UPND, I've been moving around the country. So I know what really obtains in very remote areas. You find that there is only one teacher for 7 grades. So what it means is that we neglected our own children because investment must be investment on what you see. And what you see first, you see people. You don't see a grain. You don't see copper. You don't see anything. You don't see energy. You see people. If you cannot invest in your own people, your GDP, you cannot pronounce it. You cannot pronounce inflation. You cannot pronounce anything that is to do with the economy. And the mind of the president, what is the best economic policy? Is education.
I'll bring in Zaki at this point.
Yeah.
Human capital.
Yeah.
Labor, issues of ripple effects on production and all that on our economy. How is it going to help us in our current economic situation? Inputting 30,000 into the education sector.
Thank you so very much, and I'm glad that that stems out to be one of the submissions that the Chamber of Commerce had pushed in the 2022 budget. Let me say, yesterday's presentation was a very, very, I think, strong statement of intent. I realized that most of the people were just trying to get a basket full of tax incentives and all that, though there is not really much on the rationalization of tax issues, but there is quite a lot of measures that have been allocated to supporting growth. One of them that the minister is just alluding to, look at 30,000 teachers that are going to be employed in the year 2020. We have been speaking about redrafting and remarrying, the education system with both the academic experience that pushes white-collar jobs as well as the skills and trade side of things to industrialize and realize more jobs.
Views there by Zaki CEO as well as the Minister of Education, the correlation between human capital, the recruitment that will happen with the economic, what will translate into our economy. Now let's talk purchasing, because there's going to be a lot of money in circulation. There's going to be a lot of tenders when that CDF goes into the rural areas. How is that process going to be managed? I have a purchasing consultant, Chibwe Mwelwa, and we want to talk about how this process can effectively be done once monies are churned out to those areas that will need tenders. Chibwe Mwelwa is coming through on Strictly Business, and we want to just find out that. Please come through.
Thank you.
All right. Please stand here before they tell me that COVID-19 measures have been. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
So a lot of money will be going out. There'll be a lot of money in circulation. There'll be a lot of tenders that people would want to, get a hold of. But when you look at the budget as a whole, from a purchasing stance, how do you feel, first of all?
Well, I think it's a very good budget. I've seen a number of budgets many, many times. This particular one has a lot of issues that relates to how they're going to, introduce them under SME, in the mining activities, in agriculture, in the development. There are a lot of infrastructure, speaking about everywhere else, almost the whole country. The whole issue has a very critical aspect to it, which we talk about as value for money. You see, because the ability to meet the demands of this budget would have to be with how you're going to use that money for what you intend to use it. That's value for money. You see, and the procurement aspect to the attainment of this budget is the biggest I've ever seen in all budgets, you see. And so we need to really think about exactly what President HH mentions as the three issues which are basically called.
What is the most effective way to make sure that the sectors that are, you've talked about just now, get the most effective purchasing means to the ends?
Yes.
So to say.
Look, this all money going back to the constituent, aspect, from 1.6 to almost 25.7 or something like that, millions going to actually the constituents level. What level of procurement is there? What value are you adding? The three things that we talk about as an HS golden triangle, which is the price, the quality, and the timeline. These three elements are the greatest aspect of this budget. How do we implement those at that level? That's the greatest problem that we have. So if the aspect that we have at the moment for value contribution in terms of, to the procurement process becomes number one issue ever since we started actually having even the budgets, you see. So this particular budget is a good budget, and it's taking development to the people, right to the villages and wherever. Most countries are from there. But what procurement are you going to be done there? Are you going to make sure that the price is correct? Are you going to make sure that the quality is okay? Are you going to make sure the lead time is effected? Because if you're buying something that is required today and it arrives after 2 years, it doesn't make any sense. So these three golden triangles that President Akainda has been talking about are the greatest issue of procurement around the world. So our issue of taking back this development to our country, it's very critical. But if we don't manage it, we'll have a problem with quality.
You know what we're going to be doing, Mr. Mwelwa? We'll be calling you on subsequent programs to make sure that as this budget is becoming a reality, the blueprint to the reality, you definitely be running us through how the processes are tallying with what we're seeing on the blueprint.
Yes, it has to be done, Judy, because if it's not done, by the end of next year, there will be a lot of corruption taking place in procurement.
Which we're trying to get rid of, isn't it?
So it has to be managed properly by making sure we have the right people at those levels, that quality is managed, cost is within, and the timeline is managed. Those three HS golden triangles must be managed very well. So the issue of procurement is number one problem we have at the moment.
Conversation that we could have. This has been Strictly Business. Join us again next week at the same time.